I think that when it comes to US support for the Kurdish movements in Syria and Iraq, I don't think the US necessarily wants to establish an independent Kurdish state, even though it knows full well that's what its Kurdish allies expect as a reward for the exertion of their efforts in facilitating US interests. I think what Washington actually wants is an emboldened and powerful Kurdish polity through which it can exert influence and leverage over capitals in which it is embroiled in a wrestling match, either with Russia and Iran in Damascus or with Iran in Iraq. And we've seen the extent to which the US has leaned on the Kurds in Iraq in order to try to push back against Iran's relative monopolization of the formation of governments through its Shia allies. We've also seen the extent to which Washington has asserted that the Kurds are to be a political card to be used within Iraq or within Syria when the Kurds in Iraq tried to declare unilateral independence through a referendum, and the US supported the Baghdad central government in quashing the Kurdish independence bid. So it's clear that when it comes to the US, their preference is for a Kurdish entity that is within Syria so they can influence Damascus, and that is within Iraq so they can influence Baghdad. And Turkey understands this. Turkey knows this is what Washington is trying to achieve. Where the differences arise is in the perceptions towards what the US policy will ultimately lead to. Turkey believes that the US policy of supporting Kurdish movements, especially on the Turkish border, means that the Kurds are one day going to become equipped to such an extent whereby they will seek to impose a status quo both on Turkey and on the US. They will seek to assert a unilateral bid for independence and try to force the US's hand into recognizing this bid for independence. Where the US crushed Kurdish independence in Iraq, Turkey believes that there are scenarios within which the US will not necessarily prevent a Kurdish bid for independence, but will rather consider it an unfortunate event to which it should adapt as opposed to counter. And this is the gripe that Turkey has, in that Turkey asserts that if the US wants to achieve its interest in Syria, it should work with Turkey by virtue of Turkey being the NATO ally. It should not lean on a group that has a tendency towards independence that will inevitably threaten the stability and security of Turkey. The US, however, its refusal to work with Turkey and its insistence on rather working with the Kurds instead is essentially evidence for Turkey that the US quite simply doesn't trust Ankara, and more specifically, it doesn't trust Erdogan. And this is why when it comes to the Kurdish issue and the YPG threat and the issues of the SDF, the issue is far more complex than one of simply the US simply trying to carve out the region as is often touted.